The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@MarketTalkAg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.
Well, let's take a look at weather here for the week ahead as we're getting officially into the month of February. And here to join us once again this week, except we're doing it in person, Eric Snodgrass with Nutria joining me here as we are at the agmarket.net conference in Nashville. Eric, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well.
I'll gladly come to Nashville in the winter.
Well, not when it was a couple weeks ago when it was snow and ice and it was Armageddon down here. That's for sure. Hey, you just got done speaking to a great crowd here at the agmarket.net conference, kind of giving your weather outlook here for the year ahead. And I thought it was a really great discussion. And I liked how you set up how forecasting and things, it's speculative. Yeah. I mean, we could do our best. You do a great job, of course, but at the end of the day, there's only so far out that we can really go with, great certainty, right?
Yeah. It's kind of funny. So last week was Groundhog's Day, right? So
yeah.
Everyone likes to make fun of the groundhog about being wrong. And honestly, in the last 10 years, his accuracy score has been 40%. Now, I'm telling you this because you would think that, I'd just flip a coin and do better, and you probably would. But some of the long-term forecast models that we often use to predict the weather months in advance, just to let you know, I went back and looked at their skill scores from last winter forecasting for 2023. All of the skill scores were negative. So if you're going to blame the groundhog for being wrong, understand that sometimes there's folks out there that do even a worse job, and those spring forecasts were tough last year. But bigger thing I brought up was more about this is a time of year where I hear a lot of narrative about people predicting disaster. It's like every year, there's going to be, this big event that's going to happen. There's going to be drought because this, and this line up. And we just today talked about some of the big things like, well, what did that volcano erupting in 2022 mean? What do solar cycles have to do at all with our weather? And what do we really know about the upcoming year? And how in the past, I was specifically talking about corn, but how in the past have weather premiums been brought on the market and when? Mm-hmm. And so we kind of looked at all those things. And honestly, I went after the solar cycle thing first and said, I looked at all the data and I cannot use it to predict when we'll have the next big drought episode. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then you look at the volcanic eruption, and sure, it put a lot of water vapor in the stratosphere, but you say, well, what's the longer term effect on that? Is it going to be measurable against normal variability? Possibly. Could be a little bit more warmer than average, but probably get most of that warming in the overnight hours, not in the daytime highs. So we start looking at all these things and trying to boil them all down. And it's just to say that, our ability to really tell you months in advance of exactly what's going to happen and when. Mm-hmm. I joked with the group in there, but the reality is if I knew, I wouldn't be here telling anybody.
Yep.
And so the fact that there's some folks out there making these big claims about what disaster is tough. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I was talking to Matt Bennett, one of the guys putting this on. I said, Matt, disaster is not 2012 or 88. It's not 93 or 2019. In fact, those are years where if you got insurance, you end up getting the price benefit of it for a while. Mm-hmm. The disasters are when you've got high interest rates, massive global supply, low global demand. You've got a great crop coming out of Brazil. You've got all of these things that work against the price. It's those years where things get lean and they get tough. And so I just think it's a reframing of what bad is and thinking about it from a marketing perspective. So I spent a half hour in there talking about it, but that's the condensed version for you.
I love to, a little portion of it as well that you were talking to folks about is, we get hung up on the drought monitor.
Yeah.
But you kind of said, no, let's look at the soil moisture map you're getting into this year. And I think that's so important to think about.
It is. And the drought monitor actually includes some soil moisture data, but more importantly, the drought monitor is a cumulative long-term statistics. We have to use it for what it's made for.
It's
actually out of the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. It's a fantastic product. I mean, we have one of the best monitoring of drought in the world, but it's just a reminder that you can be in deep drought, even in the middle of growing season. If you get just-in-time rains, that crop lives and can produce. So we just have to make sure that we're not overly drawing conclusions about the U.S. drought scenario when we're in the middle of a growing season. That was just a point I wanted to make.
Yeah, very, very true. All right, let's talk here and now as we're looking into the week ahead, next 2 weeks here across the U.S. What are some of the big things you're watching weather-wise?
Well, we're pretty mild, and the West is getting hammered Sunday, and then again on Monday. We're talking about a huge storm system going to California. It's going to try to get over the mountains, but it's not the type that just ejects into this huge system that just rips through the mid part of the country. So overall, on the Corn Belt, we're still on the drier side of things. I think we're going to stay there for a little bit, but it'll also be quite mild. There's a chance of getting some cold air back in here, but it's not going to be until after the middle of the month, and maybe even beyond that. Maybe the last few days of February that we actually get sustained cold. You get a cold front, it'll drop off. You get some overnight cold, but nothing big, given, I think, the position of this El Nino and the lack of cold air coming out of Alaska and Greenland. So we're going to have to wait. We'll have to wait until we get to the end of February, beginning of March, for things go active again.
How much is El Nino still fading? Yeah. What are you seeing there?
Well, it's kind of fun. It peaked right around Christmas, which is its namesake. So that's kind of neat that it did that. And then, it's been slowly fading, but it kind of kicks and screams its way out. If El Nino collapses quickly, I think we have much more elevated risk on the table later in the year. If it fades slowly, I think we back all that off. And what's amazing about it is the years where El Nino collapsed epically. I mean, you go from El Nino in winter to summer La Nina.
Yeah.
We tended to actually be dry east of the Mississippi and hot east of the Mississippi and wet west. It's kind of an interesting setup. But the years where it faded slowly, flip it. I mean, it's almost exact opposite. So that's the undercurrent of all of it. But the reality of it is when you get in season, it's all the subseasonal factors that affect the weather, which again, I'd say this all the time, but that's why we talk every Monday, because it's the week ahead, the 10 days ahead, the 2 weeks ahead that are ultimately going to determine the possibility of the crop getting better or getting worse.
Definitely. Let's move to South America. You had a great discussion with the group here as well about what's happening in Brazil and Argentina. And I know we've been seeing a lot of rains in Brazil. And I know you kind of brought up the point you're not as concerned about the crop conditions down there now. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, my concern stopped about January 2nd, and it started to rain in northern Brazil. And we know that some of that crop that went in late is going to take all this in. Some places have picked up between 8 and 18 inches of rain. And based off some satellite estimates, the crop looks healthier from space in the northern and center west growing areas. Southern Brazil is kind of hanging on to what it's been all year long in terms of the crop health view from space. And Argentina, although they're hot and dry right now, newest model forecast trying to rip through a front later on this week and bring in plenty of precip. So you look at all those things and you're going, well, I'm trying to find something that provides sustained risk. And I don't see it. I think things are flipping back over. And some of the estimates that are coming out on crop size have kind of quit just dropping and dropping and dropping. And so as a result, that means we're going to have to turn our attention to the next thing, which would be how well does the safrinha crop go? And if there's risk on the safrinha crop, some of it could go in a little bit late. Not alarming yet, but I would be worried that because of El Nino, an early slowdown in the monsoonal rains in April, which would mean possibility of pulling back some of the yield potential for that. And we know the acres are going to be lower this year. So I think our attention now, because the soybean story didn't play out quite like we all anticipated with the drought that we had in October, November, December, I just now think that it's going to be an issue with safrinha going in and then coming out and what it looks like in April.
Yeah. And you made a great point too. And we've talked about this before on the show, just how, the difference in soil types in South America versus here in the US. If we get a massive rain event, we might be out of the field for a week, but in South America, they get a massive rain event, 8 hours maybe. I mean, it's something that I think we really have to think about as well in terms of their weather and their crop conditions, just how different the soil types are in South America.
Yeah, I have a friend down there, his name's Carlos, and I asked him that question, and he may have been exaggerating a little bit, but he says, if I get 1.5 inches, 2 inches of rain at noon, on some of my fields, I can put heavy equipment on it that night. Now, I think what he was telling me was he can get back in the field quick.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that if we see all the wet weather in northern Brazil and think that it's going to really slow down harvest and planting, it probably isn't. I mean, it rains down there. It rains a lot. So I think it'll be something we'll continue to watch those progress numbers and see if the safrinha goes in late and then its vulnerabilities come April and May.
Definitely. Other places around the world, I know we've been talking a little bit about Australia and things going on there, watching Europe as well. Any other factors you're keeping an eye on here at the start of the month?
Yeah, I'm really keeping my eye on what's happening between Australia and South America. So it's all about El Nino. And at the same time, I want to be watching if the northern Pacific Ocean temperatures start to fade cold. Most models say keep them warm. And if they're kept warm, the risk of drought in the center of the United States goes down. If they start to get cold, history would tell me to say, okay, we do have a drought story to talk about for 2024. Right now, every model says, keep them near average or get them warming up. And until they say different, I won't have much of a different story.
Yeah. It just feels like, to sum it up here, start of the month, at least for February, things are kind of benign. Things are kind of quiet outside of a few areas. There's not much for us to really to beat the drum about, so to speak, is there?
No, but I'll tell you, if I could beat the drum that makes the future come true, what I want is a March 20 blizzard.
Okay.
I want a March 20th.
I'm marking that down now. March 20.
A massive blizzard that gives us 8 inches of snow that has 3 inches of liquid in it. And then after that, we can end winter. But what that would do is set us up perfect for spring. Get all that to melt in there, get the rivers full, get all the the lakes and the ponds and stuff good, and recharge that soil.
Yeah.
Beat us over our heads with terrible weather in winter, and we're happy in spring and summer.
You did mention, too, in your presentation, the Mississippi River level has come back up in recent days. So that's a good thing.
It is. Over the last 2 weeks, it's up 25 feet.
Definitely. That's a good thing to watch as well. Folks can find your weather information every day, ag-wx.com. Sign up for your weekly newsletter as well. We appreciate the time, as always. Eric, thanks for joining us here in Nashville, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good.